if it is for the first time you have come across Python in your syllabus and have no idea about it, then this series is exactly for you. We are going to learn the basics of Python, and at the same time we will keep it limited so that you are able to understand a lot of things that are relevant to your tests and exams. So let's get started. So little Ria asks computer, can you tell me what is 231 multiplied by 443? The computer replies, sorry, I didn't get what you are saying. I just understand the machine language, the binary language that is ones and zeros. Ria says, how do I then give you instructions? And the computer replies, well, you can write a program using Python or a similar programming language. It's a middle ground because it's in English, so you can easily write instructions, and because each statement has a meaning, I know what to do with it. So you can write a program. So what essentially Python is a programming language that allows you to specify instructions which computer understands, it can execute it and then give you the result. Who invented Python? So Guido van Rossum invented Python. Do you know why it is called Python? Is it because Guido had a python as a pet? No, it's a funny thing. So Guido van Rossum was a big fan of a British comedy series, Monty Python, and he picked Python specifically from this particular show called Monty Python Flying Circus. And this is the logo of Python. So anywhere you see this icon, it means Python. And now question, do you know when was Python invented? When did Guido invented Python? So the answer is 1991. I think it's much before you children were born, right? Let's talk about how we are going to run Python. So we are going to follow what most of the schools follow. We will use an app called Idle. Idle allows you to run program in two ways, an interactive shell and in script mode. Interactive shell means as and when you type something and press enter, it will get executed. For example, if you write 2 plus 3 and press enter, then immediately you will see 5. Whereas in script mode, you can write different instructions and then they all are executed together as a single program. Let's see how to open Idle. If you are on Windows, you press the Windows button, type Idle, and you can open the app. If you are on Mac like me, then what you have to do is press Command plus space and then type terminal. Once you have typed terminal, then this prompt will open and there you write idle 3 and it will open the same idle app which opens on Windows. Let's increase its size. By default, it has opened in an interactive shell. You can identify that with these three arrows. Like I said, if you write something and press enter, it will execute immediately. In books, there is also questions. Execute the following expression in interactive mode. So it means that if there is a expression given like what is 12 plus 34 minus 5, and find the result in interactive mode, so it means that in the shell you have to come here, type it and see the answer. However, if you have to write a program, which means it's not just one line which you want to execute, you want to execute a full program with different lines, then you can go to new file and here let's say write a small program. I'll explain what all this is. Let's say a is 10 and print a, though it's very obvious. So what we are doing is we are setting 10 in a variable called a and then we are printing it. So if we have to run it, we will go to run module. It will ask us to first save it. Let's save it with the name of F1 and then it executes the program, right? So this is the way we are going to use idle. And before we do more of it, let's first understand the most important terms that will lay down a very strong foundation so that you can easily understand a lot of things that we are going to talk about later. Let's talk about the basics. Just like if you are learning English, ABC is the most important thing. Similarly, for any programming language, these terms are most important, and we are going to understand these terms in the context of Python. One of the most important term is variable. What is variable? It is something that holds a value for later reference. Like here, A, B and C are variables. In the first variable we have 10. In the second variable we have put the value Nita. In the third variable we have put a decimal. So we can give different type of values to variables. But why would need a variable? We need a variable because if we are not using variable, where will we store the user inputs? Similarly, there is a value which you want to use at multiple places in your program. You can put that value into a variable and use that variable at multiple places. Tomorrow, if you want to change the value, you only have to change the value of that variable and all the places will refer to that new value. There are three different ways you can set a variable. First is what you would do most of the time, like a is equal to 10. Very simple, straightforward. It sets 10 as a value into the variable called a. Python is smart. So if you say a comma b is equal to 10 comma 20, Python understands, all right. So you want to set 10 into a and 20 into b. So it is just like, rather than writing a is equal to 10 and b is equal to 20 in two different lines, you can just compress this, make it shorter and put it like this. If you have three variables and you want to start them with the same value, so you can just write a is equal to b is equal to c is equal to 20. So Python understands, all right, you want 20 as a value to all the three different variables. So again, rather than writing three different lines, you are able to achieve this in just one line. So previously you already saw that we can actually specify different type of values. These different type of values are called data types. So there are three different data types which are relevant for your current studies. One is int. Int means numbers without any decimal. Second is float. Float means numbers with decimal. And the third is string. String means text, words, phrases, sentences. And how do we represent it? We must be using either the single quote or double quote to wrap our strings. Here, for example, I have wrapped the A using double quotes. Wrapping means that when the string starts, so first you have to put this single or double quote and use the same sign after you have completed your string. Functions are essential to any programming language. Functions are small pieces of subprogram, you can call it that way, which takes an input, does some processing and gives some output back to the user. For example, consider this. If you are confused, what is the difference between a function and a program? So this complete two lines of code is a program. The purpose of this program is to get the age of the user and print it, right? However, this program makes use of two functions, input and print. Function is a small specific program, you can say, which does a small piece of very specific thing. Whereas a program is bigger, it contains different lines and can be making use of various functions to achieve something bigger. So what are some of the common functions? Input. Input is the function which we use to get an input from the user. Print is the function provided by the Python to display something on the screen. If you want to combine a string and a variable, you can do so by separating them with comma. So for example, this program in the end will print hello, and it will also print hello, name of the user and an exclamation mark. So this is how you can combine. So there might be questions in your test that which might say hello plus d, but d plus is not the right thing. You have to use a comma. Or there might be question, okay, how would you combine a variable with a string? So this is how you do it. Remember, string values should always be wrapped within single quote or double quote. Do not wrap the variable, otherwise they will also become string. If I had wrapped d in the quotes, it will print hello d and exclamation mark. Functions can be nested too. We will understand it more in future, but for now you can easily understand that what we are doing, we are also wrapping the previous function with an int. The int function is another function provided by Python which says that it only works if it gets a number as an input. So here what we are saying, that when user enters a number, convert it into an integer because we want the age as a number, of course, and then put it in number. What will happen if user instead of writing a number puts ABCD, for example, then it will throw an error. Similarly, float function is for decimal numbers. You remember we discussed previously. So float means that if you are passing an input which is some alphabet, which is not a number or a decimal number, then it will throw an error. Why we use these kind of functions? To ensure that we are getting the right kind of input from the user and not something which is not going to help us in our program. Remember few things. Whenever you open a bracket, the same number of brackets should be closed. This is a common mistake people do. The second common mistake is that you have opened a quote but you have not closed it. These two things, if you remember, you will likely do not come across issues. Got it? And Python always executes the innermost function first. So first it will check, okay, input is the innermost function, it will execute that. Whatever is the output of it, meaning whatever user has entered, that will go to the int function, and once int function is also complete, then finally it will put the value into the num. Let's talk about some other very important term. This is something very obvious. 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. Do you know what is plus called in programming language? It is an operator, whereas 2 and 3 are operands and 5 is your result. So Python supports different operators. What are those? Most common ones are addition, plus operator, minus, subtraction. Now you don't use x. In the programming, you have to use an asterisk, which means to multiply two numbers. And divide sign, of course, you won't find it on your keyboard, but you will find a slash. So you have to use a slash for division. So here 8 by 2, if you give an instruction, it will give 4. And what is this percentage? This is interesting. It gives the remainder. So if you divide 5 by 2, the remainder will be 1. Let's talk about few more which are commonly included in the tests and exams. Double slash. 11 by 2 will give you 5.5, right? What double slash does is it removes the decimal part. So if you say 11 slash slash 2, it will just give you 5 and it will remove any decimal part. Similarly, 3 into 2 is 6, but what if you put asterisk asterisk? It means doing the exponential. What is that? 2 asterisk asterisk 3 means that multiply 2 with itself 3 times. 2 into 2 into 2. If it was 2 asterisk asterisk 5, it means multiply 2 with itself 5 times. 2 into 2 into 2 into 2 into 2. So whatever number is given on the left, it is multiplied by itself as many times as the number on the right. Comments. Comments is a piece of text which we want to have in the code, but we don't want to run it. We want Python to just ignore it. We can do so as multi-line comments by providing 3 single quotes and write whatever in any number of lines, and it will continue to be comments until we again put 3 quotes. So in the left, you see that there are whatever is written here will be ignored by Python. So this is a multi-line comment. If you just want to comment one line, you can put a hash before that line. If the Python sees the hash, it will ignore it. You might be wondering, why do I need to use comments in the first place if they are not supposed to be executed? Imagine you are in a company, you are working on a program which is 1000 lines of code and it is not written by you. It was written by someone else and you have to make some changes to it, right? If you see those 1000 lines, you will go crazy. But if that person had written lot of comments in it, following lines are doing this purpose, I am using this function for this purpose, it will make your life so easy, right? So that is why comments are essential. It helps everyone to understand what the program is doing. I think we have covered all the topics which are essential for the initial tests and exams. And here we bring it all together. Let's write our first program. In software world, whosoever runs a new programming language, it has become a ritual that the first program they write is to print hello world. So let us we also do this ritual. So I will go back and write a program, print hello world. And when we run it, okay, let's save it, file 2. So it will print the hello world. Let's move on to the second program. Here what we do, we want to take two decimal numbers as inputs and then print the following on the screen. The sum of whatever the number 1 and whatever the number 2 is the answer, right? So how do we do it? Let's go back to our program. And in our program, let's comment what we wrote earlier. So this has automatically become comment. You can notice that now the color has changed, which means Python is going to ignore it. And our program is what we want. First, we want to accept an input from the user. In fact, we want to accept two numbers from the user. So let's say number 1 is equal to, which function do we use to get something from the user? Input, right? Input, please enter first number. And to make it a little neat, let's put a colon. So this is what user will see. And then number 2, we want two numbers, right? You see why we need variables? Otherwise, what we would do with the number when user enters it? Input, please enter second number. And then what we want to do? We want to print. How do we want to print? Let's see. We'll print exactly like the sum of this and this is result. All right. So we tell Python, you print the sum of, you see, we want to print the sum of as it is, but then comes the variable, which is number 1. And then we want to print and as it is. So we again put a comma and we want and as it is. We are putting it, that's why, inside a quote. What is going to be next? Comma, number 2. And then finally is and the result. We have not calculated the result, so let's do that. Result is equal to what? Number 1 plus number 2. So our result variable holds the value of the sum and we print that here. Let me repeat the print statement once, just always see what you want to print. You want to print the sum of as it is, then a variable, and as it is, then a variable, is as it is, and then the result, right? That is what we have done. The sum of as it is, then variable. The and as it is, variable. Is as it is, variable. And we have put a comma to join all of them. Let's try to run this program. Please enter the first number. I entered 3, 5, and it prints. The sum of 3 and 5 is 35. But if you notice, there was one thing mentioned in the program. It should take two decimal number, right? What will happen if I come here and in the program, let's run it again. I put ABC and I put 34. It still does it, because what it does is it understands, okay, I cannot do a maths on a string and a number, so it just joins them. The sum of ABC and 34 is ABC 34. So it did not throw any error, but it worked. But we want the numbers to be decimal, otherwise we are not happy, right? We want that is where the functions which I told you, float and int, comes into picture. So let's go back to our code. Here in the code we say whatever the user has input, we want to convert it into float. We are using float because the question says the number can be in decimal. And we will do the same thing for the second line. Now let's try to run the program. Here now if I put ABC, you see you get an error, and the error is could not convert string to float. No, you cannot put text, it's wrong. So this is why the functions like int and float are very useful. If I view last, I am just trying to see if we can restart directly from here. Okay, I don't know the exact option. Let's do it again. So we will run the module. This time we will put proper numbers, like we will put 3.5, 2.5, and it nicely gives us 6.0. So you got that? What are the different functions, variables, and what are different basic things which you should be remembering? And I think you should be able to write some good programs. As an exercise, now I'm going to give you a program which you have to write and share in the comment if you are able to. All right. So the program is accept marks of Hindi, English, and maths from user, meaning take inputs of Hindi, English, and maths marks and print the average of your marks is result. The result is going to be the average of the marks of Hindi, English, and maths. If you don't know how average is calculated, average means the addition of all the marks divided by the number of marks you have summed. So here, because we are doing a sum of 3 marks, so you will have to sum the marks of Hindi, English, and maths and divide it by 3, and whatever comes should be displayed as a result. Remember, user should not be able to enter strings as an input. Let's see if you can do it. Till that time, bye, take care. And we are going to add more videos to this channel, so if you like this, you can subscribe to it so that you get a notification of other videos which we upload here. Thank you.